So good morning everyone. My name is Lalit Soni and I welcome you all in this live session by Drishti IAS. As usual, we will be discussing Indian Express. Before going ahead, since there are only 90 days left for your prelims, so we have come up with a last 90 days strategy, which a video has been uploaded on our YouTube channel. So if you are a fresher or if you want to have a clear strategy towards last 90 days, you can go and watch that video. So let's start with the today's session. Okay, so yeah, internet is working. Okay, fine. So we will be starting with the practice question as usual, and then we will discuss some 3 to 4 articles, and among them important would be trade diplomacy with China. Okay, so in the front page there is this particular article that is related to trade diplomacy. Government department red flag high duties to curb China imports. Okay, so we'll be discussing about that. When we are talking about diplomacy, this is basically related to, you can say, how we handle our relations with our neighbors, or as a matter of fact any other country. Okay, so there are certain angles to it. Okay, whenever we are talking about, let's say there is a geopolitical angle, there is a economic angle, there is a hydro diplomacy angle. All these angles are there. One of them is trade. Okay, so when we are talking about India and China, there is a trade related issues which are going on. Okay, on the basis of which we will be talking about this trade diplomacy with China. Okay, then we will have Sweden to finally join NATO. So basically there were few countries which were trying to join NATO, like Finland, Sweden, and then there was this Ukraine is also trying. Okay, so Finland has joined last year, and now Sweden is also set to join, because there were earlier two countries which were not giving assent, like one was Hungary and second was Turkey. Both of these countries has given their final assent, so now Sweden can be a member of NATO. So in upcoming time, like 1 or 2 months, you will be seeing that Sweden will become full-fledged member of NATO. So we will be discussing that article. Now, energy security versus US sanctions. When we are talking about US sanctions, yesterday we must have talked about that on the 2 years anniversary of Russia-Ukraine war, USA has gone for more sanctions. Nearly 93 items, or you can say 500 people plus objects has been put under economic sanctions by USA. Now, when we are talking about these sanctions, obviously that will make difficult for Russia to go for any kind of trade. Okay, but when we are talking about India, Russia is quite important energy partner for us. So right now we will be maintaining a balance between let's say these USA sanctions but and the energy diplomacy. So in this article we will be talking about what will be the effect of these sanctions, and right now there are some oil tankers which has been expected at the India's ports. So we'll be talking about them as well. Okay, then some news from the around the world, and for our own read I have selected one article, so you can go through that, and again we will be looking at a practice question for you for the next class. Okay, so this is today's front page. Here you can see this item we have already discussed. Then there is this: High Court dismisses 2 pleas of Gyanvapi panel, allows puja in southern cellar. We have talked about this particular decision of the district court of Varanasi, which has given a permission to go for worship in the southern cellar in the Gyanvapi complex. Okay, so the southern cellar is basically known as Vyas Ji Ka Teh Khana, wherein there was worship going on till 1991. Afterwards there was a judgment which has stopped. Okay, that was a oral judgment, it was not written judgment, so that is why that was again re-looked into, and Varanasi district court has allowed the worshipping of this particular place. But now some people, or you can say 2 pleas has been filed in High Court related to that particular order of Varanasi district court, and that pleas has been heard and High Court has given their verdict. So we will be talking about that as well. Okay, so now let's start with the practice question which was given to you in the last class. Who releases the household consumption expenditure survey HCES in India? Okay, we have discussed it yesterday. There is one more article with respect to this particular survey in today's newspaper, but we have not taken this because we have comprehensively covered that thing in the last class. So if you have not watched it, I would suggest that please go and watch this household consumption expenditure survey. This will be very important. I am telling you that there might be 1 or 2 statements from that particular survey or trends which are given in that particular survey. Okay, now coming to the options: Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and Ministry of Rural Development. Option C would be a right answer, which we have already discussed. Okay, now moving further with the article 1 of the day. Trade diplomacy with China, government department red flags high duties to curb China imports, seeks nuance in strategy. So basically what they are saying is that some government departments, again government has gone for the, you can say, some measures wherein they have increased the import duties. Okay, now these import duties has been increased so that the flooding of items from China can be restricted. Now the thing is, this particular import duty is there because we know that when we are talking about the competitiveness or the cheapness of the products in China, they have a manufacturing hub and they flood the items with these cheap products. Okay, their quality is, you know, of substandard, and countries like India are going for purchasing such import such objects from the China. Now since their quality is not good, there are various things which we have gone for. We have put forward with the quality standard measures, etc. But again, there are certain important things on which are also being imported by from China, and these things are quite important for your manufacturing sector. Let's say we are talking about pharmaceutical manufacturing hub, being a pharmaceutical manufacturing hub, so that we can export these pharmaceuticals in the or at the, you can say, global level. Now the thing is, for pharmaceuticals we require APIs. These APIs are basically you can say imported from China. Okay, now whole industry is basically based on these APIs, and these APIs are being imported from China. Now if you go for any kind of higher duty on these APIs, that will impact the exports of India, because if we are getting API, or you can say there is a higher duty on the API. Let's say API is costing, China is sending it at rupees 100 and you have put a duty of nearly 50%. So this API you will be buying at a 150. Okay, now afterwards there will be a manufacturing cost, and afterwards, because of the manufacturing cost, etc., that particular medicine will come outside in the market at the rate of 250. Okay, now let's consider there is a country like let's say any country, as a matter of fact, let's say a country which has imported APIs from China at cost of 100 rupees, less duty, let's say of 5%, so at cost of 105, and they have also included a cost of 100 rupees of their manufacturing, so it will amount to rupees 205. So ultimately their export will be cheaper in the market, our export will be kind of less competitive. So considering that, if you are going for the higher duties on such manufacturing elements, or which are considered to be input or raw material for the Indian manufacturing, so that ultimately harms the export for our country, or harms, or you can say they can make our manufacturing process quite costly. Okay, so there are certain concerns which are related to this particular thing when we are talking about, let's say, mobile parts, or you can say electronic vehicles related parts, etc. So for electronics, for APIs, we are quite dependent upon China. Other than that, also when we are talking about the capital machinery, etc. Okay, capital instruments, etc., for them also we are kind of dependent on China. Okay, so let's come to the article here. So here you can see nearly India has the highest duties. Here you can say 18.1%. Now here you can see 14, 12, 11, 14.1, 7, 3, 2. So these are countries like Canada, Australia, Vietnam. So considering the overall, if we see, our duty structure is quite high. Okay, so we are kind of going for a more and more import duties on the items. There are certain countries which are saying that India is going towards protectionism. Okay, but India is saying that we are trying to rescue or safeguard our own interest. Okay, now here you can see centers move to progressively high custom duty. More recently you can say offensive targeted at the Chinese components and inputs. Okay, so basically government has gone for increasing the custom duties, etc., but now the various department, like let's say METI, that electronics department which India has, or Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, they are saying that like we need components from China, and since we are in this industry people are saying that because of these high duties, these components are being expensive for us, and now ultimately it will harm our exports. Okay, so considering that, even though government has gone for hike in the custom duty, there are certain government departments which are saying that you should go for the lesser duties. Okay, so that is the issue which we will be discussing. Now we have this production linked subsidy scheme. We are trying to go for the increase in the manufacturing. Okay, and but the thing is, there are certain inputs we are importing from China. So ultimately, if there are import duties are high, ultimately it will hurt our manufacturing sector. When we are talking about imports of India, when we are talking about whatever we can, we are importing from China, there are certain things like engineering goods, electronic goods, chemical related products, non-electric machinery, industrial machinery, medicine and pharmaceutical product, and artificial resin, plastic material, etc. So these are certain, you can say imported goods from China. Okay, here you can see engineering goods and electronic goods. Okay, so when we are talking about engineering goods, they are basically machinery. Okay, then electronics goods are basically related to your chips. Okay, circuits, semiconductors, etc. Then chemical and related products. All these things are basically somehow working as an input for the manufacturing in India. So now that is a cause of concern for us. Okay, so coming to the, while India INC has mostly been at the forefront of pushing for protectionist measures including tariffs and non-tariff barriers, it is the industry itself which wants government to reduce duties on imports and capital goods and key input across sectors. So most of the time what happens when you are in a domestic industry, that domestic industry would want that you put a cap on import. Now, but the thing is, industry would want to put a cap on imports, or you can say increase the import duty, because they want that their product should be competitive in their domestic market. Now ultimately they are saying that imported goods or the finished product, the final product, should have a high duties, not the raw materials. Okay, here we are talking about the raw materials. These, all these stuffs which we have talked about, these are somehow working as an input to manufacturing. So you can say that they are kind of a raw material to the manufacturing. Now this industry is saying that you can put or increase the duties on the final or the finished products. Okay, and not on the raw materials, because if you are increasing duty on raw material, it will ultimately harm their interest. Okay, so that is what industry is saying. So there are certain times industry go for the protectionist trends, and then they ask for the, you can say, losing the import duty on the raw materials. Now there is also a clash between two contrasting viewpoints. One is India's domestic market being a bargaining chip and high tariff walls forcing foreign companies to manufacture here. So basically, what is the idea of the government behind it? That since India has a lot of markets, we have a population. So population, ultimately you can say that it is a market. Okay, now foreign companies want to exploit this market. They want to sell their products to this market. Okay, so what they will do is they will try to export as much as product in this market as possible. Okay, but if you are increasing your import duties, let's say India is increasing the import duties, these external markets won't be able to sell their products inside the domestic territory of India. Okay, so what they will do is, to exploit this market, they will come from the outside and set up an industry over here. Okay, so once they are setting up an industry in the India, so ultimately that is a domestic product, so that will be part of our GDP. Okay, so our rationale behind increasing the import duty is that since we will be increasing the import duty, so directly that furnished product cannot come inside India. Okay, so what these external countries or nation has to do is, they can come to the Indian territory and they can set up a industry here, and once they set up an industry here, ultimately it will contribute to our GDP. Okay, so that will be a you can say a model which will guide our growth. Okay, so that is the idea of the government behind it. Okay, now second viewpoint is that domestic cost competitiveness is important for the export competitiveness, and that can only happen with the lower tariff. Now second party, or you can say industry, is saying that if import duties are less, so ultimately your manufacturing cost is less, because ultimately we are right now we are talking about the raw materials or the all the products which are used in the manufacturing process. So all the products which are used in the manufacturing process, if they are cheaper, so cost of the manufacturing would be cheaper in India, and ultimately if you have a cheaper product, or you can say a product with a high quality but a lesser cost, that will ultimately increase your competitiveness in the export market. Okay, so outside when you are selling your goods would be cheaper than the other countries. Okay, So that is the idea, or that is the particular rationale which has been given by the industry behind this. Okay, so there are two points. Government is saying that they are trying to increase the GDP, so that they are going for that they are going for the increase in the import duty, so that these external players can come to India, they can set up the industry here, so that they don't have to pay any kind of import duty, and that will actually enhance our GDP. And the second party is saying that since you are going for the increasing tariff, that tariff will ultimately harm the manufacturing process, and there will be an increase in the cost that will actually make your exports less competitive. Okay, so these are the two rationale which has been talked about. Recently, when we are talking about China, China has been infamous for going for dumping. Okay, dumping is a term which is used for the cheap import product which China is trying to flood inside the other territories. Okay, so here you can say that to check the cheap quality imports from China, India imposed a quality control orders. Okay, quality control orders. Here you can say that that is basically I can say that it is a non-tariff barrier only. Okay, so India is trying to make sure less of cheap products come into our territory by China. Okay, that restricts MSME from getting necessary input materials. Now, since these quality control orders are put forward, because of which there are certain imports which are not to be they are not entering into Indian market, and because of which the MSME sector, which is a small sector, they are going for, you can say, whatever they can identify and get for a lesser cost. So they are using such raw material, or you can say such input for their production. So ultimately these MSMEs are not getting their input materials. Okay, now globally there is no country with tariffs so high. When we are talking about India, India has very high tariffs. Okay, so here you can say India has tariffs which are higher than other countries in South Asia and even Africa. Okay, tariffs, no doubt tariffs can be for a security reason. Okay, let's say when we are talking about this anti-dumping. Okay, so that is basically for your security reason. Okay, but otherwise also if you are going for the protectionist measure, that will ultimately harm the global economy. Okay, now there are some safeguards which are given in the Director General of Trade Remedies, that is related to your tariffs, etc. And these they have given this exception where you can go for the tariffs for your security reasons. Okay, now when we are talking about the developed countries which have maximum tariffs at 60%, when we are talking about the products like tobacco, so maximum tariff what they have is nearly around 60%. Okay, when we are talking about these maximum tariffs are as high as 150%. Okay, so India has that level of tariffs which has been put forward on imported items. So but when we are talking about these countries like developed countries, there is a difference between a developed country and a developing country like India. But the thing is, again, even considering that these tariffs of 150% is quite high, we need to reduce the tariff in the calibrated manner. So we have to come up with a strategy where we can reduce the tariffs in a slow and gradual manner. Protectionism is not nationalism. So one thing is clear, there is this term nationalism, wherein we are trying to talk about our own interest, we are putting the nation first. Okay, but protectionism is not the way to do it, because ultimately if you are going for the protectionism, that you will harm your own interest, because we are living in a global village, or you can say in a globalized market. So ultimately opening yourself is quite important here, because protectionism will increase the inefficiency, as I told you, because of such high duties, ultimately our manufacturing will get hurt. Okay, you cannot give protection till eternity. Obviously in the earlier time, when 1950s 60s we have nascent industry, we have given some kind of safeguard, we have given protectionism to this industry, because that was the need of the time. Okay, but you cannot do that on the regular basis for indefinite period of time. Now when we are talking about China, we are quite dependent on China for our import related needs, for our manufacturing related needs. So we cannot go for such high tariffs. Here you can say we are significantly dependent on Chinese imports, pharmaceuticals, electronics. India is home to barely 3% of Chinese export. Okay, when we are talking about China, our trade with China, or whatever items we can send to China, is nearly 3% of their total imports. When we are talking about China's part, China is sending nearly 14% of India's total imports. When we are talking about India's imports, there are 14% which is coming from China. That is a huge chunk. Okay, now These are basically intermediate goods and the capital goods. Intermediate goods are basically the goods which are being used in the manufacturing process. Let's say, as I told you, we have an industry that is related to pharmaceuticals, and we are making a drug. Okay, but for that production we need APIs. These APIs are coming from China. These APIs are basically your intermediary good. Okay. Other than that, also these capital goods are basically your engineering goods or machinery, etc. Okay. So these are kind of, we are dependent for the supply chain. If such things are not coming to the country, that will ultimately harm the supply chain, and that ultimately causes for difficulties in the manufacturing process. Now, Ministry of Commerce denies these duties increase are protectionist nature. Government is saying that obviously these are not protectionist in nature. These are broadly, you can say that, global trends, and we have seen that after COVID, most of the countries has gone for the protectionist measures. Okay, even USA, etc., they have gone for the America First policy, all these things. But the thing is, ultimately they are saying that these are broad international trends, okay, which India is also following. Okay, other than that, as I told you, they have given this rationale that they want to increase the GDP. Okay, India's tariff hikes clearly started well before the largely post-pandemic mood of the protectionism in the Western world kicked in. As I told you, post-COVID, every country or even the Western countries are going for the protectionism. But the thing is, India has started doing that earlier with respect to China, even before that, because of the anti-dumping measures which India taken. Okay. Other than that, when we are talking about Galwan issue, when this Galwan issue happened before COVID, and that is the point wherein we have seen some kind of decline, or you can say setbacks in the trade with India and China. We have tried coming up with a alternative, being an alternative to China. There are certain countries like Vietnam, Thailand, etc. They are also kind of going to make themselves as a manufacturing hub in a particular field, and India is doing the same. But the thing is, right now when we see that because of our dependency, our manufacturing process, which is dependent on the Chinese imported goods, so ultimately the countries like Vietnam and Thailand are doing good. And if we don't go for if we don't stop going for such protectionist measure, there are high chances that these countries will take, or these countries will occupy the void which is created by slowdown in China. Okay, and they will be the person, or they will be the countries which are providing an alternative to China. That ideally that should be India. Okay, now chosen to stay out of the important mega regional trading arrangement, including regional comprehensive economic partnership. Right now, as I told you, there are broader international trends which are basically going for the bilateral trade agreement. India is also doing that. India is going for the bilateral trade agreement with recently you have seen that we have signed one with the UAE. We are trying to sign one with the Qatar. Even we are trying to go for a free trade agreement with European Union and Britain. Okay, so we are going for the bilateral agreements, but we have not joined the RCEP. You know that ASEAN's RCEP was comprehensive economic partnership which India did not join. Okay, and the reason being that our agriculture, or you can say these FTAs, or you can say these regional FTA has not when we are talking about FDAs, these are most of the time not in India's favor, because there are certain countries which are doing good in the dairy sector. When we are talking about RCEP, Australia is also part of it, and there are high chances, there are speculations that Australia will harm the interest of India's dairy sector, and because of certain other speculations, India did not join RCEP. Okay, but that would have been a good chance, because obviously we have mostly with the ASEAN country we have bilateral trade agreements. Okay, so if you would have gone ahead with it, it would not have made much difference. Okay, but the thing is that is in the past now. So this is basically about China's and India's trade policy or trade diplomacy. I would like to tell you that you remember that whenever there is a questions related to geopolitics on China and India, I would suggest that you enter this angle as well, because these measures, earlier there was trade and there was no such incidents, but after Galwan we have seen high degree of protectionism in the trade when we are talking about India and China. Okay, now let's move further in the next article, that is related to High Court dismisses 2 pleas of Gyanvapi panel, allows puja in the southern cellar. This issue is quite old, and in 1993, okay, I would say that there was this oral order of the court which stopped puja, or you can say stopped worship inside this cellar. This before that, before 1993, there was this particular family which is performing puja over there, and this cellar was in under their occupation. Okay, but the thing is, after 1993, they have stopped this puja in this particular place that is known as Vyas Ji Ka Tehkhana. Okay, and afterwards, recently in 2024, 23, 24, there was this order by the district court. Varanasi district court given an order. They have started, restarted the puja in the Tehkhana. Okay, so against this order, there were communities which has gone to the High Court, Allahabad High Court, and they have put forward a plea that there should be a stay on this particular order. Okay, but High Court has rejected it because they have said that there was puja which was going on, earlier when we are talking about 1993, but then there was an oral order. Okay, so that oral order is not valid. This is not constitutionally valid, and that is why this puja is this order of Varanasi district court is constitutional and valid. Okay, so they have not accepted their petitions. They did not accept the plea. Okay, now question for us is not that if there is a puja going on there or not. Our question is that what is the rationale behind it, and that rationale comes from your article 25. Okay, article 25 of the constitution grants freedom of religion. Okay, the Vyasji family who continued performance of the religious worship and rituals in the cellar could not be denied access by an oral order. Obviously, because this particular ritual was going on before 1993, so that was you can say safeguarded by the article 25, and now court given an oral order which was against the article 25 at that point of time. Okay, so that order was not valid at all. Okay, so considering that a citizen's right guaranteed under article 25 cannot be taken away by arbitrary action of the state. Okay, so such order like oral orders are kind of considered as arbitrary actions by the state if they are taking a fundamental right of a person. Okay, so considering that, High Court has dismissed the pleas which has been filed in front of High Court against this particular order. Okay, so now here what is important for you is that article 25 UPSC has this tendency to ask questions about the articles. Okay, they can confuse you between article 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 because these are intermingled when we are talking about the rights of minorities, and when we are talking about the right of freedom of your religious freedom, etc. So please make sure that you are well versed with these articles of fundamental rights, fundamental duties, and DPSP. Okay, now moving further, that is related to your security. We have talked about Milan 24, that is an exercise by Indian Navy, and that has happened in Visakhapatnam from 19th of February to 27th of February. You don't have to remember the name, but the thing is, this is a naval exercise. Okay, and recently nearly 50 countries has participated, so obviously you can understand the significance of this exercise in the Indian Ocean region. Okay, so here what they have basically talked about here, mega multinational naval exercise Milan 24 structured around the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations and convoy protection from asymmetric threats. Okay, so basically when we are talking about asymmetric threat, they are referring to the issues which are going on in the Red Sea right now, that missile attacks, drone attacks, or any kind of hijacking, piracy, all these things are which is happening in the Red Sea. They are basically talking about these asymmetric threats. Okay, now other thing was humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Okay, so this is the object behind it, since we know that this area or there are many island countries which are prone to various disasters by the extreme events which has been happening because of the climate change, and considering that, and India being a security provider, or you can say front runner in the security of this region. Okay, India has started this made an exercise wherein all these countries, all these small island countries can come together and they can talk about it. Okay, they can participate in the exercise. Okay, so that is the aim of Milan. So this paragraph becomes important for you. What is the aim or the object behind the Milan exercise? Okay, now when we are talking about these asymmetric threats, as I told you, series of drone attack, missile attacks on the merchant vessel in the Red Sea, including the missile drone attack on the Palalu flag commercial vessel last week, have come to the fore in the Western Arabian Ocean in the recent months, which we have seen, and that all these things are creating all these things are basically because of the Yemen's Houthi rebels. Okay, so these Houthi rebels are basically saying that they are in this way they are expressing their support to Hamas in the Gaza Strip area. Okay, so the current geopolitical situation and the maritime challenges, including asymmetric threats, will be among the main topic to be taken up for the discussion and exercise with the participating navies. So basically that is what they will be discussing. Okay, it happened at Visakhapatnam. Over 50 countries has taken part in this exercise. Key diplomacy objective which the Navy has sought to achieve through the ongoing exercise is to forge naval alliances for a secure maritime future and achieving great jointness and cohesiveness towards the collective outcome and the exchange best practices through the collaboration. So ultimately, with all these complex words, what they are trying to say is that the object behind this exercise is to make sure this area is maritimely secured. Second thing is to ensure that there is a cooperation and collaboration when we are talking about this area, and best practices which is to be employed can be shared on this particular platform. Okay, enhancing interoperability and the strengthening bridge of friendship with partner nations and showcasing indigenous capabilities. Obviously, so this is the platform where you can go for trust building activities. There you can go for interoperability. Let's say there is a Navy of India which is having this exercise with a Navy of a small island nation. So they can together how modus operandi will be. Okay, so because obviously they are having some different set of regulation. Indian Navy is having different set of regulation. Now they are coming together so that in the case of any kind of joint exercise, let's say if there is a piracy activity going on and these two countries has to collab. Okay, so how they would do that? Okay, recently you must have heard that some Sri Lankan vessel was in Western Arabian Ocean, and with collaboration of Sri Lanka and India, they have rescued that vessel. And Seychelles has also taken participation in certain exercise. So for that, interoperability is important, and that can be achieved through this particular exercises. Okay, so now this Milan 24 becomes important for you. Now moving further, around the world, 3 of the 14 sanctioned tankers slated to deliver Russian crude oil to India. Okay, as I told you, USA has put some sanctions. Okay, you know that there was this annexation, or you can say attack on Ukraine, February 2022. Okay, and that is 2 years which has completed, and on that particular day, USA has gone for the more sanctions. Nearly 93 objects and more than 500 people plus object products has been put under the sanctions. That is not important how many of them are put under the sanctions, but the thing is USA put sanctions on Russia. They have increased more sanctions on Russia. Okay, so now what is the impact of these sanctions in when we are talking about India? So recently, US sanctions targeted vessels, including those owned by the Russia's Sovcomflot. This is the company's name. You don't have to remember that. Allegedly transporting Russian oil price above G7's cap, that is $60 per barrel. Okay, so this particular vessel which is been transporting oil to India at a price which is above, that is $60 per barrel. Okay, so they have put sanctions and they have put this value that if there is a vessel which is transporting oil which is costing more than $60 per barrel, that particular vessel will be under sanctions. Okay, now ship tracking data reveals that 3 of those sanctioned tankers are scheduled to deliver crude oil to Indian ports in the coming week. Indian refiners including Reliance Industries, Indian Oil Corporation, etc. have not responded to queries regarding to the sanctions impact. Okay, so when they were asked, they did not say anything about it, while industry expect minimal disruptions initially, because USA has given a window of 45 days in which you can do, and afterwards you are not allowed to go for certain trades. So initially there might not be any disruptions. Indian refiner may hesitate to accept crude oil from sanctioned tankers after 45 days of offloading period. Okay, so after 45 days there might be a hesitancy, because ultimately this hesitancy is because of the payment methods. Okay, whenever there are sanctions, so there would international payment would be hampered. Okay, so when we are talking about international payments, there is this particular mechanism, that is SWIFT. Okay, So on the basis of that mechanism, there are payments to be done, okay, but then when there is sanctions, that payment method won't work, okay. So ultimately that will create some kind of hurdle in the payment system, and that is why Indian banks may refrain from processing payments for cargoes from sanctioned vessels, okay. So that is the thing, when we are putting some sanctions on a country, and there will be an issue related to the banking, or you can say financial transactions, okay. So banks would be refrain from doing such certain transactions. So that is why this is how these sanctions will impact the trade, okay. Now what will be the impact for India? India's stance on the Russian oil purchases. Despite the sanctions, Indian government maintains that buying discounted Russian oil is in the interest of the India's energy security. You know that when we are talking about energy related needs, India, for our crude oil import, we are dependent on various countries. There are most of the, let's say if our demand is 100%, 85% is coming from the imports, okay. So we are quite dependent on these countries. So obviously it is in our national interest if there some guy is giving us at a cheaper price, okay. Now after this Ukraine war started, Russia has giving some discount on their oil shipments. So that is why India is taking oil from Russia. Officials argue that India's increased purchase of Russian oil have helped stabilize global energy markets and mitigate price volatility. Obviously we are getting this discounted prices, so we will be buying from Russia. Now rise in Russian oil imports by India. Indian refiners has significantly increased their purchase of Russian oil following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Russia offers deep discounts on the crude, has become India's largest source of crude oil despite being a marginal player in the past, okay. So earlier when there was no discount, India has gone for lesser imports from Russia, but the thing is now we are getting discounts, so obviously we are going for the more and more imports from Russia. Now India's energy security. India is the world's third largest consumer of crude oil, okay. Then it relies heavily on the imports, which are meeting 85% of our energy needs, okay. So that is why it is important that we are getting oil which is at the cheaper price. Obviously that is related to your forex. If we are spending less on our imports, our forex will be quite stable. So that is another thing. Government views discounted Russian crude as a crucial element for ensuring energy security and stabilizing global energy markets, okay. So that is the rationale behind our trade in oil with Russia, despite the sanctions which has been put by the USA. Other than that also, Russia and India has always shared a very important bond, okay, and based on which you can say that Russia has been our iron friend in all time, okay. So ultimately that is the reason. One more reason, when last time USA has gone for such sanctions, we have gone for a deal of S-400, okay. So that is why we are trying to make a balance between Russia and USA right now, but let's see what happens after these new sanctions, okay. But right now that is the case. Now Sweden clears final hurdle to join NATO. As I told you, there were two countries. One was Turkey and second was Hungary, okay. So these two countries are quite they were not giving a green flag to Sweden's membership in NATO, okay. So when we are talking about NATO, you know that it is an alliance, Cold War time alliance, which was happened to form a collective security organization in this particular region, wherein along with USA and Canada there are some European members, okay. And ultimately the strength of these countries is right now 31 countries, okay, but after the addition of Sweden that will be 32, okay. Last member which joined was Finland, okay. Now why these two countries were having oppositions? Because Turkey has this opposition because of the Kurdistan Workers Party. So there is this Kurdistan Workers Party which is there in you can say Sweden, and they are actually saying certain things about Turkey, and Turkey is in opposition to that, and Sweden is saying that is their freedom of speech, okay. So that was one contention which was taken care of, because now Sweden is taking action against them. Second thing is Turkey has gone forward with a deal with USA, okay. So there is this vehicle which Turkey has actually purchased from USA, that is F-16 fighter jets. Okay, so that was in interest of Turkey, and by this negotiation they have said yes to the Sweden's membership. Now when we are talking about Hungary, Hungary has also gone for some bilateral trade. Okay, they have also gone for the bilateral trade agreement, and obviously they wanted something in favor, exchange of something. So basically that was a transactional relation. Most of the time we see that countries of West are seen to have this transaction related relations, but when we are talking about India, India is more reliable in that regard. We don't want anything in return most of the time, but in foreign policy leveraging such things is not a big issue. Okay, so ultimately now Sweden will be becoming 32nd member of NATO. Here you can see location. These countries are basically somehow connected to NATO. Okay, these countries like Bosnia, Herzegovina, Ukraine and Georgia, they are still aspiring to join. Okay, other than that, when we are looking at all these countries, these are members of NATO, and Sweden here, okay, Sweden here has become on the, you can say that will become 32nd member. Finland is the 31st member. Last joining member was Finland, and now Sweden will join. Okay, other than that, here you can see this is the location of this particular northern European area. Okay, there is this North Sea. Here you can see this is the location of Denmark. Why I am talking about Denmark and why I am talking about Germany here, that you will see in the next slide. But right now remember that it in the south of the Northern Sea we have Germany. In the southwest of North Sea we have Denmark. Okay, so and other than that, these Gulf of Bothnia, Baltic Sea, Norwegian Sea and Barents Sea, these are quite important locations for your examination point of view. Now coming to the next article, that is related to Germany having a plans to store carbon dioxide in the offshore areas, wherein they will be going for the storage inside the water. Okay, so now let's see why they are doing is that Germany is considered to be the most industrialized country or nation in the industrial nation in the European Union. Okay, now they have gone for the net zero emission target by 2045. When we are talking about India, India has this target of net zero by 2070. Okay, so they have gone for this target by 2045. Now they are saying that we have very less time. Okay, we have target of limiting the temperature change to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is international target. Okay, but we don't have much time left, and we are actually approaching that deadline very soon. So ultimately they are saying that they are going for, Germany plans to enable underground carbon storage at offshore sites. Okay, time is running out to combat the climate change related battle. Now the thing is, now they are going for this thing that they will take carbon dioxide from their industry, they will send it to the seabed and store it there. Okay, now there are various countries which are employing these particular method, that is Denmark is also doing it in the North Sea area, as I told you in the previous slide. Here you can see, so this is Germany and this is Denmark. Denmark is doing the same thing in the North Sea. Okay, and here Germany is planning to do the same thing in that particular area in their own exclusive economic zone. Okay, but there are certain environmentalists which are saying that that method might not be viable. Okay, that method is ultimately it will put a liability on the future generation, because ultimately you are storing the carbon dioxide in the seabed, and who knows what will happen in the future. Okay, so that is expensive, not sustainable, and encumbers future generation with a future long liabilities. Okay, so this is a particular argument which has been put forward by the environmentalist over there. And other than that, when we are talking about the government is targeting this deadline related to the 1.5 degrees Celsius. We are heading towards exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius deadline. We are no longer in luxury or comfort zone where we can wait for something else. Okay, so obviously now time is running, but the thing is we should go for methods which are more reliable. Let's say going for the generation of renewable energy, going for the green energy, clean energy, that can be a way forward. Okay, but the thing is, let's see if they are doing it, what happens. But that is right now a plan of Germany to go for underground sequestration of the carbon storage in the North Sea in their own exclusive economic zone. Okay, so these two countries you can remember right now, that is, one is Germany, second is Denmark. Okay, Denmark has already started in the North Sea, and Germany has planned for it in the North Sea in their own exclusive economic zones. Okay, so that is about this article. Now, for your own read, there is this article in the explained page, that is a very small article, why Maharashtra is exempting some private school from the RTE quota. Okay, so basically right to education, that is under your fundamental rights. I would like you to answer that which fundamental right talk about right to education, and when was it added into the Indian constitution. Okay, so this particular article talks about some exemptions which are given to some private schools in Maharashtra. So you can go through it and why they are talking about it. Okay, with that we will be moving forward to our last section, that is related to your practice question for your prelims. Now, which of the following is the most recent member to formally join NATO before Sweden? Okay, so your options are Ukraine, Turkey, Hungary and Finland. Okay, so you can attempt this question and answer in the comment box. Okay, with that I would like to take your leave, and I would request you to subscribe the channel if you have not done it already. Thank you. I'll see you in the next episode.